back to our next episode of the Hormone Café. We have our wonderful dietitian, Callie. She is a registered dietitian here at Vera Health and Fertility, and she focuses on women's health specifically. So one thing that I really wanted to talk to her to you about today is nutrition specifically for painful periods. Because as women, a lot of times we do struggle with painful periods and we feel like we need a lot of ibuprofen and we are clutching our heating pad and we're kind of dreading that time of our period. Or even if we just have light cramps that are a little bit disruptive for our life, here at Vera, everything we do starts with nutrition. So that's the foundation. So whether or not you need any other therapies, we always want to make sure that the core of what you're doing is optimizing your period, because our goal for you is that you feel amazing every day. You can function on your period. It does not disrupt your life. You maybe have to take one ibuprofen for a couple cramps that you have one day, and that is it. So I really wanted to go through what are some of the things that we can be doing either throughout the whole cycle or just during our period to make sure that our period is as less painful as possible. So things that we wanted to go over today with you are, what are the foods that help with period pain? How do I eat some of those foods that can really bring my pain down? And then what foods should I limit or avoid? And then when we're thinking about our whole menstrual cycle, are there things that we should be eating during the whole menstrual cycle to really limit that period pain? And then other lifestyle tips, because food is one of those, but there's some things that we can be doing to really strengthen the power of that food on limiting your inflammation. So what would you say if people are having pain? What are some of the go-to foods and kind of things that you would recommend?
Yeah. So anti-inflammatory foods. So whether you're adding turmeric in, some of your nuts, your seeds, quality oils like avocado oil or olive oil can all be really beneficial, because if we can get lower inflammation, a lot of times you're going to have a lot less of that cramping going on. Magnesium-rich foods. So pumpkin seeds is like a really easy way, like 2 tablespoons of pumpkin seeds in, especially before you start your cycle, can really help not only with cramping, but also with headaches as well. That's a good one. Spinach, dark chocolate, and almonds are also foods that are rich in magnesium as well. Iron-rich foods, especially if you are bleeding heavier. So iron-rich foods can, again, come from your spinach. They can come from like your grass-fed beef. Some of your other meat also has iron in it as well. That can be super helpful to add. And I always like to encourage not just adding it right the day you start your cycle, but especially if you're, paying attention to your cycle, adding it prior to your cycle, so we can honestly get on top of the pain before it just hits so hard that first or second day. Hydrating foods, so foods like your berries, and also cooling foods, so foods like cucumbers and watermelon can be really hydrating and also help with some of those period pains as well.
So things like, anti-inflammatories, pro-magnesium, and then I loved how you said cooling foods. I had to ask Callie what that was. I said, what's a cooling food? But it makes sense just to get even hydration and water from various sources and keep your blood flow to your uterus. I love that. Is there anything that we shouldn't be eating on our period?
Yeah, so limiting caffeine can be really helpful.
Ouch.
Yeah. Yeah, on your cycle, especially those first couple days when hormones are really shifting, because as we know, caffeine also draws water out of your cells and makes us more dehydrated. So if we're drinking excessive caffeine, that can also cause a lot more of that pain. Staying away from a lot of those high processed foods, and I know that word can be so usefully loose, but the more that we eat those whole foods that are coming from real sources can really help leading up to our cycle, instead of eating a lot of those fried, really processed foods that honestly, as soon as that inflammation hits, you're going to have a lot of cramping. So really try to stay clear of a lot of those. Alcohol is another one, especially leading up to your cycle. Really try to stay clear of alcohol as well, as we know that can kind of shift all of those hormone variables as well.
And then I know sometimes people just really crave sugar on their period and carbohydrates, and they feel like all of their willpower kind of goes out the window. Any recommendations for that?
Yeah. So if I would like as much as possible to encourage, if you are going to have a carbohydrate, to get it from like a real source. So choosing a fruit, especially like a water-based one, like I was mentioning, or an anti-inflammatory one. So watermelon, kind of like that cooling water-based, anti-inflammatory, more like that berry. But if you're like, absolutely, oh my gosh, I have to have this little piece of chocolate or whatnot, make sure you have some protein on board so that it doesn't send your blood sugars even more haywire. You have more cravings, kind of just sets you up for that roller coaster ride of cravings, cramping, and kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, I have totally lost myself. So as much as possible, having a piece of fruit is not going to make or break you, especially when you pair it with a protein, which is going to be the ultimate way to keep everything kind of more together.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not like you can't have a carbohydrate.
Yeah.
If you just pair it, it won't send your blood sugar so crazy and kind of make your sugar cravings even worse during that time. Do you need more carbs on your period? We can skip that.
Okay, let's skip that.
And then when we're thinking about our period, obviously we have the time that we're bleeding or our menstrual phase, but then we have all the rest of the month kind of leading up to that. Are there foods that we should really focus on during the whole cycle in order to optimize or prevent us from having pain when we're on our period?
So there's different phases that we can definitely talk about different foods, but overall getting that balance of definitely having some carbohydrates and your protein on board and those high fiber carbs, healthy fats are all really, really important. If we're specifically talking about like your menstrual phase when leading up to your cycle and then through your cycle, warming foods can be really, really helpful. So like you were mentioning before, like a lot of us will go reach for that hot pad, but even, a couple of days leading up to your cycle, having some more herbal teas, some bone broth, can all be really nourishing for your body and kind of just really support your body well. Definitely making sure that you get enough protein on board, and there may be specific foods, but really just honing in on variety is kind of key to getting a lot of those different nutrients. Obviously, when you are on your cycle, you're going to be losing more blood. So having those iron-rich foods, like foods that come from fish, spinach, things like that can be all really beneficial.
Yeah, I think diversity is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, whenever you go to the store, just buy a different seed.
Yeah.
Just try a different seed or try a different color vegetable or see if you like it.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing, just to optimize your B vitamins. And then you're focusing on your anti-inflammatory foods and trying some different things. What about other things? Is there any other tips that we can do to prevent us from having so much pain in addition to what we're eating?
So you are having more loss at that time. So hydration is always important, but definitely honing in on your hydration. And I feel like sometimes when you're in that cycle and you're feeling bloated and just kind of off, it's honestly, most of the time, that's when I see the least hydration from a lot of my clients, where it's just, they're not hydrating well. So even if you can remember, to at least get that 64 ounces in and really optimize it. If you're like, I just can't drink this water, add some cucumbers to it, add some of those cooling foods, add some berries to it, add some bone broth in throughout your day, add some herbal teas. But water can be really, really just rejuvenating for your body when you're already having that loss. Focusing on like stress release activities as well. So whether that's gentle movement, even just taking some time for yourself. And, typically during our menstrual phase, that's usually when we're less motivated, to state it simply. So giving yourself that grace and that time, just if you need a little bit of extra rest, especially those first couple of days of your cycle, just to really kind of tune into your body and listen to yourself and say, you know what, I need to really block this time or have this time in the evening to kind of like wind down and just take a little time for myself.
And I love the movement, because I feel like sometimes when we hopefully we're not in pain. Our goal is for you to not be in pain. But when we're having cramps, sometimes we just want to lay in bed and not do anything. But it is important, that movement, as far as blood flow to your uterus, because if your uterus is what I call dry and doesn't have good blood flow, it's going to make cramps worse. So it doesn't have to be crazy.
Yeah.
But even something light and gentle can help. And I love tea, because then if you're just feeling like you're maxed out on water, tea's just lovely. Are there any teas that you specifically recommend for cramps? I usually do red raspberry leaf.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was anything that you're like, oh, this is what I say.
I'm usually dandelion tea. I kind of, red leaf is like a good one. Maybe we'll cut that part out.
That's fine. Well, perfect. Well, that's lovely. I think it's helpful just to know kind of what to focus on and then what to avoid, so we can always be using nutrition to power our bodies, and just to know as women, we do need to know what's going on, and that there's phases in our cycle that we're just going to have to be a little bit more mindful and be a little bit more restful than other phases. So I love that. Today we talked about foods that help with period pain, and then foods that we want to limit or avoid, menstrual kind of phase type foods that we want to think about eating our entire cycle, and then just different tips, for example, like really staying hydrated, having a little bit of a gentle movement, just to optimize everything else that we're doing from a nutrition standpoint. Thank you so much today for joining us, Callie. Thank you so much for your wisdom, and thanks for joining us on this episode of our Hormone Cafe. And stay tuned for our next episode.